Hey guys, Filthy here. Today I want to talk about something that's been weighing kind of heavily on my mind, something I've been thinking about a lot recently, and that is my content creation as a whole and what the future of that looks like. It seems like a pretty good time for me to reflect on this. My wife and I, for the first time in a decade, are in a location that we're likely to stay at with a fairly stable life at the moment, so a pretty good sense of what's to come life-wise. And that seems like a good time to be reviewing what I'm doing and kind of iterating on that a bit. And additionally, this is year 9 of full-time live streaming for a living, where all of my income comes from my content creation. And I think it's a fair amount of data I've amassed over the years for where income comes from, and also a fair number of things I've tried across the course of these years for things that may or may not work with my channel, and a lot of information from that. So I want to talk about that today. The video is going to be broken down into 4 kind of major parts. The first part is going to be talking about my understanding of my viewers and my content, my personal boundaries and limitations for content creation, and then my conceptual goals for continued content creation, the types of things I want it to meet and do for me. Then second, I'm going to talk about where my money comes from as a content creator, so my revenue streams and how those revenue streams kind of inform where I should put my effort for what else I do. And then I'll talk a little bit about why I have these financial goals at all. And then I want to move on to the conclusions I draw from the combination of those first 2 categories and the changes that I could see or want to see moving forward on my channel. And then I want to open the whole thing up to community discussion to get input from you all on my thought process and any insight you all can offer into that that I may have missed or just may not have engaged with at all. So hopefully if this is interesting for you guys, this will be a great video, and see you in the next part. All right, so it seems like to me, the first thing to talk about is my understanding of my audience. And because the channel arose kind of organically, I didn't start with goals in mind. I started by people asking me to stream, and then added YouTube because people were asking me for YouTube. It doesn't start from a very good top-down approach for how to build a channel. So over the years, I've run a number of polls, and of course, I gather my own anecdotal experience of this streaming process the entire time. And it seems to be that most of my viewers come to my channel for one of basically 3 reasons. And they might be overlapping to some degree, and it probably isn't entirely inclusive, but this seems to capture the bulk of my viewers as I understand it. So first and foremost, it's entertainment, right? You turn on a Twitch stream, you watch a game you're interested in, you watch a streamer that you can tolerate, you watch a personality that you're all right with. It's some version of just having the television on, essentially. The second is game selection. I really like this portion of my channel, which is viewers will decide upon games that they might themselves be interested in through watching my experience with it. And I've tried to lean into this a little bit already with things like the website, which tracks my ratings of games and gives a small kind of text review of that game. But I'd probably like to lean more into this into the future. We'll talk about that a little bit later. This seems to be another reason why people are in the channel at all. They're trying to figure out what games they might want to play and what games look good and what things they like about these games and what games to avoid, essentially. All right, and the third of these is education and expertise. And this seems to be a pretty small subset. Right? This is the YouTube guides drive a lot of this. So when I get very into a game, I make guide videos for that game. And when I get very into a game, I get to do very deep dive and optimization kind of problems for that game. How to best do this, how to take a very complex system and do well in that, how to reach these goals for this game, that type of stuff. And that also seems to be something that my viewers come to my channel for, which is when I get super involved in a game, they get to see high-level gameplay for that, and they get to be helped to get to their own high-level gameplay through that. And I think a lot of this is probably just time, really. You know, I get to do this as a living, so this means I get to dump 8 hours a day into a game for as long as I want to play that game, and no one else can compete with this time-wise, right? You got a job, you got a life, you can't do this on your own as well very easily, or as much as I can for as many different games. So it's a bit of a shortcut to come to a stream or a guide video or someone who's doing this type of stuff and see expert level play, and that's a appeal of the channel as well. I think there's a missing element of this, because all 3 of these to some degree are viewers saying, hey, Filthy, we like how you think, or at least how you present the ways that you think, how you summarize the way you think, maybe. And I think there's room there for more things that lean into that. And I've got some ideas of what that looks like a little bit later, but there's probably other ideas in that category that might be worth thinking about over the course of the video that you guys might think of that I haven't yet thought of, but we'll get to that later. All right. So if that's why people are coming, that's half the equation. Here's why people show up. Here's what they're interested in. The other half is, well, what do I want from it? What am I doing with it? And where are my limitations for that? So for me, streaming it's my only source of income. Streaming and content creation. I guess I should put both of those in there. And it exists in the bigger scope of my life. So for me, I don't want to be only online. I don't find life particularly rewarding when it's as one-dimensional as that. I have a wife who I like to spend time with. I have goals and activities outside of that sphere. So for me, I need some level of work-life balance. And I come from, my dad's an immigrant. My mother's family was quite poor. My parents have pulled themselves up, and certainly they have imparted to me the idea of hard work. Hard work got me through graduate school. It got me through regular school. It has led me well in all my work environments, etc. And I believe in hard work on some level, but I don't really believe in grinding. I feel like grinding is the worst elements of hard work, which is basically repetition without understanding, at least some elements of this. I feel like the general sentiment of work hard or work harder is like the general sentiment of be good. It, on some level, is accurate, but the devil's in the details. And blindly following that isn't enough to be successful, and certainly isn't a good use of your time. So I like work smart more than I like work hard. And it's not that I'm unwilling to put effort into something. I certainly am. I certainly believe in that. But it's more effort down a bad route is not a good thing. So anyways, work life important to me. And I think part of work life is understanding where to put your effort and how to focus your effort. Another element that's super important to me is the grifting side of this business. Content creation and influencers as a whole do a lot of grifting, and I fucking hate grifting. And I know this is an empty virtue signal on some level, but I don't want to be attempting to maximally exploit my viewer for my personal gain. That isn't how I want that relationship to be. I don't think it's a sustainable relationship. I think that is a short-term strategy, and it's a short-term strategy of exploitation, and I'm just not interested in that. I don't think ethically I want to be there. I don't think my personal interaction with that is an unpleasant interaction from that on both sides. I neither like to be exploited, nor do I like to exploit people. I prefer a value exchange if possible. So I prefer to lean into the idea that I'm doing some value. Perhaps that's just the bare minimum of entertainment, and perhaps there's more to it. These other things we just talked about in the previous section, but there's some value that my channel is bringing to the viewer that in some way is enough that they wish to support the channel. And you can lean into this more and more, but the more you lean into it, the more it feels like you're chasing the peripheral route of persuasion. And I'm not interested in that. I want the direct route of persuasion. I don't want to be flashy or attractive or only witty, or I want to provide actual insight into the thing we're doing. And the thing we're doing is entertainment. It's gaming. So on some level, what is the importance of that? Maybe not that large, but nevertheless, in that domain, I wish to be as useful as possible. And I don't want this to be a exploitive relationship if I can avoid it. So I don't want to lean heavier into thumbnails, for example. Yes, I think thumbnails are a part of YouTube. They're part of the algorithm. They're part of getting people to click on shit. But baiting people to click onto something, although it's part of the profession, is what I think of personally as kind of an ugly part of the profession, right? I want the content to be good enough to drive people to it because they've seen previous content. They've looked at and decided that the stuff they're looking for isn't deeply approached somewhere else and they can find it here. I'd rather it not be, that's a really funny face he's making, I'll click on it. That's the wrong type of information that I wish to convey. So there's going to be some level of having to do that anyways. You have to play the game to some degree, but I don't find playing that game a very inspiring or motivating element of this for me. So I wish to stay away from that as much as I can with the boundaries that I draw for my content creation. And then The other kind of big boundary for me is game interest. I find good content is driven from passion, and I am often passionate about the games I play, but my passion will reach a limit. Like I'll hit a wall. Mentally, I conceptualize this as a wall. I will be playing a game, and then suddenly I'm no longer interested in the game. Often it is when I finally see through the illusion of decision making, or when the optimization leads to a single repetitive route, or when the gameplay is reduced to just like a build order optimization. That kind of stuff all just kills it for me. The games that I like are highly challenging. They're often multiplayer because multiplayer has the best adaptation of opponents. They're often very replayable and very complex because complexity allows often either multiple strategies or the optimal strategy is much harder to find. And those games are interesting to me until they are solved. But if I'm not interested in a game, I can't make good content about it. And when I am interested in a game, I have the passion to go super deep into it, to make these 4-hour guide videos or this type of content. So it seems essential to my content to be interested in a game. And I seem to be in the minority of A, the types of games I'm interested in, and B, how long I'm interested in a game. Well, I will burn out on a game. And partially because I'm playing it 7 or 8 hours a day as part of the streaming, right? It's the downside of the benefit of having the time to do that. So for me, it becomes an important boundary to also be interested in that game. And it's going to play into some stuff in a minute, but we'll talk more about that later. All right. And finally, the bigger conceptual goals. This is a living, first and foremost. This is a profession. This is something I either need to do well enough that I can make a living off of it, or I need to do something else because I can't exist without that, right? So, and I would like to make it sustainable. There's been a number of ups and downs over the years. The last 2 years, last year, 2022, was fairly reasonable. It was very similar to 2020 for me. 2021 was a disaster of a year for me, financially, for the channel. And previous years to that have all been growth years, and these years have been a bit more flat. So I would like to correct that trajectory because I don't think it's sustainable as that. I've always kind of been on the border of success for this channel, where I am a super minority for terms of the size of my channel, in terms of how big it is. Like, it's already at the extremes of who does streaming, but it's not, it's like at the border of what makes that sustainable. If like, here's like, some huge streamer and here's someone who doesn't make it, I'm like 2 steps above that for like sustainability of that. So it needs to be a bit more sustainable than it is. There's no retirement package here. There's no benefits here. If viewers stop coming to my channel tomorrow, streaming ends. The skills aren't super translatable. Maybe there's some stuff for game design. I have a lot of game insight after all these years of playing them and making guide content of them and discussing them extensively. But by and large, a lot of these skills are not super translatable to another profession either. So the costs of continuing down this profession are a little bit expensive compared to alternative costs or alternative options. And it needs to be as sustainable as possible to kind of buffer the insecurity of the job, the lack of benefits, the lack of any cushion if it disappears, the lack of any promise that it will be here in the future. And then finally, I think for me, it needs to be iterative, right? This is a really weird platform to be making content on. It's a weird niche in the world right now of content creation, and everyone seems to want to do it. It's expanding. It's clearly interesting to people, but the competition is getting heavy. There's more and more people doing it. People are very innovative. People are very talented, and the cream rises to the top here a bit with this. So I think just staying in the same pattern I've always been in is not really conducive to long-term sustainability of this. I'm going to have to adapt. I'm going to have to figure out solutions to some of the problems that I'm encountering. I have to iterate. I have to work smarter, right? These are the types of things that I'm looking for conceptually for goals from this. So for the next part of this video, I want to talk a little bit about some of the viewership trends on my channel. So I'm going to pull a bunch of data from, not a bunch, I'm going to pull a couple graphs from YouTube and Twitch and talk a little bit about what they mean and the information that seems useful from that to me. So we're going to start with a graph from, this is Twitch data, and this is my average viewership by month for basically the duration that I've been streaming since 2015 here. A couple things to note: that top right is Social Blade data, which is essentially how you rank up against other streamers in the world. You can see my overall size stuff up there. And then I think the other kind of interesting thing to pull from this data is how much variance there is on a month-to-month basis. And that is driven by a bunch of things, but some of that is the title of the game I'm playing, the time of the year, and then the popularity of the game, which I guess is a byproduct of the game I'm playing. But you can see that it's massively different. Sometimes I got 200 viewers, sometimes I'm at 1,200 viewers, somewhere, the average is, obviously somewhere in between of those, but it goes up and down by a lot. And it's kind of annoying because a lot of the income demographics or the income that goes with my profession is driven by viewership. So this is how much my income for any given month will spike or drop, which is a really shitty position to be in as a content creator because it makes it very unpredictable and it makes it very lots of ups and downs. And those ups and downs translate, for me at least, pretty much emotionally too, right? Which is when your channel's doing well, you feel great. When your channel's doing shitty, you're terrified and you're worried about, well, what does the future hold? And it's great when it comes up again, but it's difficult to plan for. My channel has had 3 large successes across 9 years for demographic wise for us, for what I'm doing. How do I say this? 3 standout games, I guess, right? And that's Civ, Darkest Dungeon, and Battle Brothers. And we've done a lot in the last couple of years to expand our reach. So community submissions via website with a whole process to find games and good games as rapidly as we can. But I have pretty niche tastes for games, and I'm competing against every other streamer in the universe for eyeballs, and finding good in-depth strategy games is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be to begin with. There's less of them out there than I was expecting, honestly. So it would be nice to figure out ways that reduce this variance or better position ourselves to find the gems as they show up. And those are gems not only because they make me more money, which is of course super helpful, but they make me more money because they're games I get passionate about and the viewers get passionate about as well, and that have enough replayability that we can dump hours into them, and then have enough depth that because we dumped hours into them, we can make guide video content about them, because there's enough to talk about and enough interesting things to talk about that the game has more to it than just play for a couple hours, beat the game, move on kind of deal. So anyway, just an interesting graph for that. All right, moving on. This is total YouTube views, which I thought was kind of cool, 64 million at this point. Demographics are to be expected. There are like 97% male, primarily 18 to 34, with still a decent chunk, 20% of the views coming from 35 to 44. I'm expecting and hoping as gamers age that these demographics will also distribute a bit more evenly into the higher age brackets as gamers continue to play games throughout their life. I'm kind of counting on that a little bit for my career. Otherwise, I'll just age out, right? Because I will continue to get older as I play games, and hopefully my viewership is either going to age with me and continue to do that, or got to bring in people from the bottom, I suppose. So anyways, worth thinking about as well. This one I think is also very interesting, is to me anyways, which is what does well on YouTube for me. YouTube is not a particularly great platform for series of gameplay, right? Like exporting gameplay largely unedited to YouTube. It's not a very good format for promoting that, hosting that, or even just viewing that, really. So the stuff that does well on my channel are guide content, but I can't generate I can't generate guide content without having a game that has enough depth to it and enough interest for it to play it long enough to do that. Guide content is expert content. Expert content requires hundreds, if not thousands of hours of playing that game to get to the point where you can talk about that. And that's a huge investment in time and energy for something that often doesn't pan out. There's been some guide videos for smaller games that I was interested in enough to make some content for, like Dawn of War 3 or Battlefleet Gothic Armada, or a couple others like this, right? I can't think of any more off the top of my head, but there's been a number across the years. And those videos disappear into obscurity for rapidly and without any impact whatsoever, but they still take roughly the same amount of expertise. I still have to have played those games for hundreds of hours before I'm to a point where I can talk about them with good, useful tips and interesting stuff about the game kind of deal. So these things seem like byproducts of the game having success outside of what I'm doing. In other words, there's no demand for guide content for small games that nobody plays because no one wants to watch that shit because there's basically only a very few of us playing that game. So the YouTube content to me doesn't seem like it can be a primary source of anything. It seems like to some degree it's a secondary source, right? It's a secondary source of reflection upon what, at least right now, and this is part of what I want to change. But at the moment, it basically is which games are great and have enough content in them that I can later make additional supplementary YouTube kind of content for them above and beyond just playing them on Twitch. And I thought this would be an interesting kind of demographic to show that. And the last graph I want to talk about is income by platform, essentially. So these are the last 5 years of data for that for me. You can see it as a percent breakdown on the top graph, and then the second graph is a comparative between the last 5 years of streaming for me. Orange is sponsors, green is direct donations, yellow is YouTube, red is Twitch, and blue is Patreon. I think for me, I suspect that YouTube can be grown with the right ingredients, but those ingredients are a change of how we do YouTube content and probably an editor, because I don't think it works without it. We're going to talk a bit more about that in the suggestions, but it is worth noting because I think that is currently it's like 20% of the income, roughly 15 to 20%, and I think that could be a little bit better. Twitch is interesting in of itself. Twitch, I think, is gobbling up portions of other income. Bits and subs, like the way that subs are promoted these days, and gifting subs in particular has, in many channels, pretty much overtaken donations, right? And this is Twitch's attempt to get in between the donator and the content creator. But by doing so, they're also promoting those forms of donation. I don't actually think it hurts the streamers' income. I think it hurts the viewers' efficiency for donations, essentially. Which by that, I mean this. If you're going to donate, let's say you have a budget and your budget is, I can donate to a streamer, I don't know, pick a number. Let's use a round number for ease, right? Let's say $100 is what you can donate to a streamer in, let's put a time period, like a year, whatever this is, whatever this happens to be. It doesn't matter for the point of this. If you direct donate through like PayPal or something like that, or Patreon, maybe 97% gets through. If you convert it to subs, so instead, maybe you donate 20 subs or you donate 5 subs 4 times across the course of the year or something. Twitch eats 50% of that. The basic partner rate for a Twitch for a streamer on Twitch is 50% of the sub revenue. So a creator going through Patreon, or rather, a donator going through Patreon donates 97%. A donator donating through subs to a streamer donates 50%. So Twitch is attempting, and it doesn't, I think overall it probably doesn't hurt the streamer income, but I think it demands more of viewers trying to support them, which I think is probably not great by and large as design goes. I don't know why pointing that out, perhaps just to make note of that. It always kind of bothered me that Twitch, it makes sense that Twitch wants to do that. They increase their revenue, but I don't like at the cost of what it has to come at for that. What else of note here? Sponsorships are a big portion of income. 2020, when I was still a big part of, or rather when I was still part of F2K, which was a org that was in part designed to connect the streamers who were part of that org with sponsors, and they did a pretty good job of that for the period of time before they went bankrupt, essentially. I haven't really found a incredible replacement for them. I've been part of a number of orgs now. Each one has promised to help me with my channel, help me with content selection and content promotion, essentially. Especially, they always promise YouTube returns, and by and large, I've seen almost no returns from these companies. And I have finally settled on a profit sharing breakdown with an individual who helps a number of streamers do this. I pay her a percentage of my sponsorship income, and she goes out and finds me sponsorships appropriate for my channel, and that's great. That kind of division of work is fantastic for me as a small content creator, and I also really like the incentive as a percentage-based thing that she's incentivized to get me good deals and find me stuff, and she gets paid according to how well it works for my channel, which is fantastic. I like sponsorship stuff by and large. If it's even remotely related to the type of content I promote on channel, I don't mind evaluating that, right? We do a lot of game evaluation on channel already, and being paid to do that is fine by me. I kind of like that as a source of revenue. There is a ton of money in advertising, and a lot of these titles have a absolute astronomical amount of money to spend promoting their product. And that's great, because anything that takes away I like models that move away from direct donation for support of my channel. They both A, seem more sustainable, and B, they seem like less of a direct drain on my viewer, which makes the value transaction that I'm providing a better transaction for the viewer, which I appreciate. That said, the evaluative metric that sponsors use to pitch you rates for your channel is concurrent viewership over the last period of time that they evaluate it. So when I do multiple weeks of streaming a low view count game like Celeste recently, which is a great game, had a blast with it, really loved every moment, loved most moments of playing that, thought it was an excellent game. It kills my value that I will be offered for sponsors coming into the future until I up those concurrent viewer counts again. I kind of hate that is the only metric that matters for that portion of my income. So it's always very painful to be playing low viewer count games because it means it's going to hurt my bottom line, even if I really enjoyed the game. And again, that's something I would love to brainstorm solutions to. I'm not sure there are for exactly that outcome, but we'll see. We'll see some stuff with that. All right. Hopefully this was kind of interesting as a little bit of a breakdown, but really I want it as a lead in to the next section here, but also the next section of the video. I have encountered over these last 9 years recurring small creator problems, and they basically look like this. I don't have time, expertise, or interest to do all of the things that my channel needs done. For example, I need to meta tag my YouTube videos, create graphics for my YouTube videos, title my videos, and if I'm doing best practices for this, I am looking for and reacting to global trends and how this is done, and looking for the most interest and eye-catching kind of garbage that goes with that, often funny facial expressions, brightly colored this kind of garbage, right? So that's the first side. I'll need to edit. I need to design and create emotes. I need to design and create channel artwork for my stuff. I need to think of and implement promotions on a regular basis. These are including things like sub drives or just special events on the channel. I should design and implement channel points, preferably the flashier and more interactive, the better. Let's see. I should figure out the content that will be coming to my channel as a variety streamer. This is a big challenge, and a big portion of my time goes for selecting for and finding good content, but I would continue to do that. Ideally, I would be doing something like looking at like the Steam most viewed games or most played games or some version of this. I should chase hype cycles if at all possible. I should continue to promote myself for sponsorships to various companies, some of them directly related to gaming, some of them supplemental, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the reality is I'm one person. I don't have the time to do any of this shit, or rather the shit I need to focus on doesn't allow for all of these things. And I can't, as a small business owner, pay to have all of these things done for me either. So a lot of these things get caught in this kind of sad state of, yeah, it would be nice to update the artwork on this page, or to have another intro video for this, or to have an intro video for my YouTube, or an intro video for my Twitch, or another video notification of this. But they don't get attended to very often. They tend to be a clump of them done at once when that kind of is on my plate and I have the time for it and I move on to something else. They don't get updated all the time. It's a small creator problem, right? I can't afford to pay for these things. These things would be small increases in both probably the profitability of the channel, but also in the kind of presentation and professionalism perhaps of the channel. But I can't afford or attend to them. I have neither the time nor the money to do that. The best solution I've found, and the solution I want to lean into even more, is profit sharing. I suspect that the best next step for my YouTube would be a slight change in the focus of the stuff that comes up there. More about that in the next section. And ideally working with a profit sharing editor where I offer some percentage of either some breakdown where they're incentivized in the same way I'm incentivized to make videos, where a decent percentage of the total income from any video is going to the editor as well as me as the content creator, which would be something I'd love to do, because I would love to put more of the YouTube stuff out there if I can, but there's difficulties in editing and time and all the rest of the garbage that goes with managing the YouTube channel. And then this becomes a barrier to entry for some of the things that I wish to do. And it's tough to be willing to allot the time to these, because the time isn't there. The time has to come from something else. And most of the time, diminishing returns on these are not worth attending to. So I find that process frustrating because oftentimes a viewer or a comment will say something about, oh, this is out of date, or you could really use a video for this, or you should put more effort into that. And it's added to that kind of endless list of things that needs to have more effort and attention to. And I don't have an endless amount of time or energy to attend to those things. And I thought it was kind of worth pointing out with the breakdown of these things, where the focus would be based on where the income is for that. How do I make money in this profession? So, okay, so where's all this leading? Well, I like what I do by and large. I love streaming games to a community. I love exploring the depth of games with an interested community of people who also want those experiences. That's super fun for me. I even the shitty parts of that are made much nicer by doing this as part of a community. I like having a value proposition to give back to that I can look back and be like, all these cool things that we did. And I love hearing from viewers that I help them find games that they're interested in, or help them better engage with the games that they are interested in. All that strikes me just right. I'm totally okay with that. I like having that community element of that. I'd like to continue doing what I'm doing, and hopefully, we can do that. I'd like to combat boredom a little bit, though. Some of the game searching stuff that we've leaned into in the last 2 years have resulted in me playing more games, which expands my comfort level of what I'm happy to play or what I enjoy playing. And I've found some great games outside of what I consider the types of games I would like from that. But it also has a limit to it, right? We play a lot of garbage games. That's part of the game selection, and I'm okay with that. But it's, man, is it boring to constantly be looking for games. And I don't know, again, the community suggestion stuff helps with that a little bit, but it would be nice to diversify a little bit. And I have some ideas for that in a minute here. I need to keep this sustainable. Last couple of years haven't been great with this. I would like to get back kind of on track from how I see it for slow expansion. I don't need to be rich doing this. That isn't my goal. But my goal is to be able to eventually retire, to maintain a life, to have a work-life balance that allows me to interact with my family, to do some traveling, and to be able to take time off without panicking that, that can't be away from the stream kind of deal. And none of this is built into the core jobs. All that has to be built in from income, essentially, from what I'm doing. And I would like to adapt, right? Like, I want to keep going with this, which means that I have to adapt to what the information and feedback we're getting from this is. And some of that to me is I need to make more money doing this, which means I need to either expand viewership in some way. So that said, what are some of the thoughts that have come to mind for me? Well, I think reaction videos, I can almost hear the cringes. I can, in the future, predict some of the cringes coming through the internet right now back at me. But let me try to contextualize this a little bit more. I think if people view my content in large part because they like the way I think about these things and they're looking for thoughts on some specific topics, I think I can expand the list of topics to do that with. I think the same across most categories, right? In the sense that I'm still me and I'm still engaging with this. And I feel often not intellectually challenged by this profession. I miss some of the learning and new experiences and new setups that I got a lot in graduate school from. Graduate school was a shit ton of information being thrown at you all the time of all sorts of new and interesting topics. I think some of that might be able to be done with some of the reaction content. I watch a lot of Destiny stuff, and I watch a lot of Asmongold stuff, and Asmon in particular does an amazing job of having a say about everything. And regardless of whether or not you like his takes, they are his takes on a wide variety of things that are happening in the world. And for my content, probably the people looking for the guide video on Civilization don't really give a shit what I think about this. But the viewer who has come to me initially through the guide video on Civilization and stayed around for each of the games and likes my takes on games might be very interested in what I have to say about some upcoming game, some game release. And that might also move into other areas. The other areas that I'd be kind of interested in reacting to, or some of the social content out there, is kind of interesting to me. And I have a degree. I have my master's, and my wife has a PhD in social psychology with an emphasis for us on intimate relationships. So I love talking about relationship stuff. I've kind of been fairly interested in some of the stuff happening on the internet with that right now. I won't be too specific about it, but that type of stuff would also be fun to react to. That might be some content that only makes it to YouTube perhaps, or perhaps we do this sometimes on stream and see how it goes. But I could see that being relatively low cost while still expanding some of the content I do on stream. So I like that as an idea, and I'm going to talk about how to give feedback in a minute in the last section, but I'm interested in hearing what you guys think about that too. The other thing I'd like to do is I'd like to lean harder into the review kind of video format. I can't do this next step, I don't think, realistically without an editor. So I have to crack finding an editor. I would like to set up a profit share relationship. I don't know where to look for this shit. I've looked online. I talk to other streamers who have found them. Inevitably, it's something like I found a person in my community who wished to do this, who wanted to grow into this relationship. I find this super hard for what I do. I do variety streaming. How can anyone keep up with that? So I don't know. I guess I would use this video to help promote that call, as well as ask you guys for maybe more resources to find that. I have been through maybe like 7 or 8 editors in the course of my time online. I haven't tried a direct profit sharing setup with any of them, although I'm happy to try that and experiment with that. And it's never really worked out. They've never been affordable. And I don't mind this being short-term loss, long-term gain kind of deal for a relationship with that. But I think there's room for development and growth in the YouTube side, but I can't do that alone. I don't have the time, interest, or skill set to do that. And I'm not particularly interested in getting heavily into editing, and I don't want it to be where my time is spent. It's not the enjoyable portion of it for me. It's enjoyable making the YouTube videos, but it's not enjoyable doing the mechanical portions of it from my perspective. And I think an editor would add a lot to this. And I think, but I would like to do that. So I think that side could do it. I think it would be very easy with the number of games that come across my channel to do essentially like 5-minute reviews or short reviews of them. It would work well with the website we already have in play. We already have the infrastructure for text reviews. It would be nice to do a 5-minute review, and then if a game becomes something we play more on stream, I can do more in-depth either review or guide content for it as we get more in-depth into it. But it would get away from having to be an expert to speak about it at all. And currently all of my YouTube stuff must be an expert to speak about it, and that makes hundreds if not thousands of hours of playing each game before I can release videos on it. And I think it would be worthwhile to do some short stuff for that. So any help finding editors in general would be really advantageous for me, I think. And then the last 2 categories that come to mind, they're somewhat related. I did a couple of developer interviews across the course of my channel. I've always enjoyed them. I loved talking with Soren recently. I think that is really interesting content for me as the player of their game to both hear kind of behind the scenes what they were thinking, as well as to promote their product to some degree, as well as to promote them individually. Soren was awesome. It was so cool chatting with him. He was a very down-to-earth gamer talking about this really cool thing they've done. And he's also an expert in his field with an incredible amount of games and things he's done. That was awesome. I would love to do more of that. I don't know where that comes from. And then this kind of sideline that's happened for me a little bit is I've done some game consulting over the last couple of years. I've done this now with a couple companies, and that's also been really, really fun. Much more fun than I was expecting. I like the passion and expertise that a number of these game developers are bringing to the table. And hearing that is really, for me, inspiring behind the games. Because sometimes you see a game and you know it's a money grab. You know that game, no matter what its initial vision was, how it's come out, it's a money grab. And I haven't had this experience. When game devs have reached out to consult with me, it's almost always been the passionate game devs, the people who are really behind their product, really excited about what they're making, and want to talk about how to make it better, how to make it more appealing, how to get it out there, that type of stuff. And that has been awesome for me. I really like that. So I'd like to lean into that a bit more too. I don't know what that looks like for you guys. I'm not sure there's a lot of feedback to be brought there, but I want to put it back. I want to put it out there as something that I have enjoyed doing in the last couple of years and would like to do more of. All right, let's finish this up. So let me just talk a little bit about feedback. I've done some state of the channel kind of videos before where I've spoken about things and asked for feedback, but I've never been very great about specifically asking for what type of feedback I'm looking for. So I'm going to do that here because I think it's going to improve the quality of responses I get from this. And that is, I would like you guys to try to respect the boundaries I've laid out for this, or convince me that some of those boundaries are wrong. I'm okay having the premise of my arguments questioned or expanded on if you want to engage with that argument as a whole. But I don't want people to accept my premises, some of the starting points I have for this, and then ignore the outcomes of that. For example, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to get 10 YouTube comments saying this, and then we're going to ignore those YouTube comments. It's going to be a waste of everyone's time. If someone tells me you should do better thumbnails, end of example, end of the text they've added that doesn't engage with any of the kind of conditions that I'm actually working with on my channel and misses the point of this conversation. So maybe someone could say, Filthy, you're undervaluing YouTube as a whole. This represents a large portion of growth that you are essentially neglecting, and a key element of that growth is thumbnails. At least that would then engage somewhat with the conditions I've set up ahead of time for this conversation, right? Don't think that comment's actually accurate, but that type of thing is the type of feedback I'm looking for. I'm an external thinker, so even if I get no feedback from this is still worth me putting out there to some level to kind of just articulate my thoughts. And by articulating my thoughts, I both help tell you guys about that and teach you guys about that, but I also help fortify them a bit to really think through them and hopefully present them in a consistent, logical manner. And if that hasn't come through, if you guys are seeing big holes in how I'm thinking, please tell me about that. Preferably respectfully, but torpedo it. If you see a big hole, torpedo that. That's fine. I'd like to see it. If I'm thinking about this incorrectly, I would like to fix that. A quick reminder, I am a jack of all trades as a small business owner. That's essentially what I do. I have to do all the things on my side of things, and it tends to mean this flip side of that conversation, the flip side of that phrase is jack of all trades, master of none. And I often feel that way. That here I am doing yet another thing that's totally outside of my wheelhouse, outside of my comfort zone. Audio is a perfect example of that on my channel. I despise dealing with computer audio, and a huge shout out to the experts in my community who have helped me through many of the technical challenges that I've had with streaming. I really, really appreciate that kind of input. I want to make a nod out to the haters. I know all of you guys engage with my content in different ways. What you use it for what suits you. Some of you are here for the entertainment value. This probably wasn't a very entertaining video. I don't think that a lot of you are going to still be here at this point, but many of you have over time come to be a part of this community, and I would appreciate your feedback. And some of you are haters, and you're here to rile me up, root for my failure, that kind of stuff. You're welcome to respond, but when I do go over this, your stuff's going to probably be pretty much ignored. So anyway, and then finally, I'm expecting that I will at some point on stream take a look at this video and the responses to it, and maybe talk over some of the stuff that's come up as responses and as reactions to this video, and kind of looking forward to doing that. We've done this in the past once or twice, and it's been pretty fun to do. So anyways, I wanted to put this out here, give a little bit of update on the channel. I know it's been months since I posted on the YouTube, and this is part of this conversation. Hopefully helps explain part of why that has been the case, and part of what what's been going on in my head as I think about streaming and continuing onwards with streaming and trying to figure out how to make this sustainable and how to continue to do this long term. So anyways, thank you very much for listening. And if you can or are interested, please leave some comments below talking about this. This is my request for response from you guys. So please do so. Anyways, thanks. See you soon.